What we'd like to do now is move on to the next topic. The candidate to answer these first series of questions will be Jim Bender. The topic is the Supreme Court. One of the most important roles you'll play when you are elected as a U.S. Senator is the voting of the confirmation for federal judges and justices to the Supreme Court. Starting with candidate Bender, in your own words, define the role of the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Jim. The role of the Supreme Court is to uphold the laws of the land and act as a check and balance on the executive and legislative branches. My criteria for selecting or affirming judges, and this is going to become topical this summer as John Paul Stevens has just decided to retire, is does the candidate that the president selects understand the law and the Constitution, number one, and number two, do they have a judicial track record of applying the law and the Constitution? In other words, are they not activist judges? By that standard, there's only 4 of the 9 that I would have voted to appoint or to approve: Scalia, Alito, Roberts, and Thomas. Those are the only 4. The other 5 have a track record of being activist judges. And this is an area where I differ from some of the other candidates, because a couple of the candidates have said that they would have voted to approve Sonia Sotomayor. Sonia Sotomayor was an activist judge. She had a track record of basing her judgments on empathy rather than the law. And that's not what we need. The role of the Congress is to write laws. And the role of the Supreme Court is to uphold laws and to act as a check and balance. So that would be my standard, and I think I've made my position very clear on that. As a follow-up to the last question, I wanted to just give you a funny anecdote. When I was working in 1978 in the Department of Energy, I asked one of the managers, "How many people work here?" And he said, "Oh, about half."
And right now, the same question to candidate Bill Benny.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I sure can. In your own words, define the role of the Supreme Court.
The role of the Supreme Court is not to interpret the Constitution, but uphold it. There are lots of things that have happened in 234 years. I'll give you one very basic one, the FAA. There's no place in the United States Constitution that allows for the FAA. They didn't have airplanes when the Founding Fathers drafted. And yet it regulates very complicated things. That's the role of the Supreme Court. I think the question, though, goes to the heart of what do I think a jurist should be? Because a United States Senator really does have a large voice in saying who they should and should not support. I believe in small government. I believe in picking jurists that believe in small government. I believe that the United States Constitution is a limiting document, not a living document. I think that legislators should legislate and jurists should do exactly that. They shouldn't interpret, they shouldn't broaden the law. And so I would have voted against Sotomayor. And of all the people on the court today, I believe that John Roberts represents the kind of jurist that I would pick. Thank you.
Lead candidate LaMontagne.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd just like to give you a little background. Yes, I'm a lawyer. Don't hold that against me, okay? But I went to law school at the University of Wyoming, and after I completed my law education, I became a law clerk for a judge on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the level of appellate court right below the Supreme Court. And cases go from the 10th Circuit up to the Supreme Court if they're federal in nature and if the Supreme Court accepts them. The Supreme Court is, for most cases, an appellate court. That means it looks at the laws as implied by the lower court. It looks at the facts found and so forth. And there are standards about which it applies the law to those facts and makes determinations. The Supreme Court takes precious few cases, and it's probably a good thing. But the Supreme Court is the head of the third branch of government. The Supreme Court's role is to review those cases, apply the law strictly. And you know what? Every now and then the Supreme Court should be saying, we might like a different outcome. But that job is for the Congress, for the states, for someone else, not us. Judicial restraint is about that. Sometimes our system is imperfect. And sometimes the cases that come before the Supreme Court have kind of odd results. It's not for the Supreme Court to step in and second-guess the Congress. It's for the Supreme Court to look at those cases on the merits and apply the law strictly. I am not a candidate who would support the confirmation of Judge Sotomayor. She does not exemplify either the temperament or the approach to the court. And I think it's important that the Senate play the role given by the Constitution of providing advice and consent when the nominations are made. We don't nominate. The Senate would provide advice and consent in the vote. And even on the losing side, I think the people of New Hampshire deserve a no vote on someone like Justice Sotomayor. Thank you.
And Sen Kelly Ayotte to find the role of the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court is an independent third branch of government, and our founding fathers set up each branch of government to have equal authority. And they set up that branch to be independent of the politics. They receive lifetime appointments, and it's very important that they're independent of the politics. I believe when it comes to Supreme Court justices, we need a single standard, not a double standard. And that single standard would be, are they qualified, and do they adhere to the Constitution? While I would have never nominated Justice Sotomayor, nor do I necessarily agree with her ideology, I think she met that standard. And, you know, if we apply a single standard when a Republican president nominates a justice that is otherwise qualified, the Democrats won't be able to oppose a conservative qualified justice like Justice Bork just based on ideology. I thought it was hypocritical when President Obama threatened to filibuster Justice Alito and also Justice Roberts, obviously qualified justices, just based on ideology. I don't think that we should be hypocritical. We should elect a Republican conservative president to nominate conservative justices, and we should be better than being hypocritical when we're in the minority. And that's why I would have supported her, not because I agreed with her ideology. Of all the candidates up here, I'm the only one that's argued a case before the United States Supreme Court. The court takes very few cases, and I had the opportunity to do that. And this reminds me of being before the Supreme Court because they hold up the red light when they ask the questions. And I can tell you that Chief Justice Roberts was the Chief Justice at the time I argued that case, defending our parental notification law. He is the type of justice that if I were in the position of picking the justice that I would like to see on the court. And I agree also Justice Scalia is another person who is a strong conservative justice, and the standard which I hope when we have a Republican president we will nominate those types of justices.